You guys are going to really enjoy this. You guys are going to like this. This is from the vault. This is a trip back in time. But given the findings of the Durham report, which ultimately conclude that the Russia investigation should have never happened in the first place, I was reminded of this infamous exchange between Sam Seder and Michael Tracey. So this was from early April 2019, just days after the Mueller report was turned in. Sam pressures Michael Tracey into admitting that the investigation was justified despite its underwhelming conclusion. So when the Mueller report was turned in, the libs were all very upset that there were not going to be any new charges. This was just a couple of weeks after that. And so the libs were feeling very, very butthurt about the Mueller report not going their way. And the reason why this Durham report reminded me of this clip that I'm about to show you guys is because this Durham report concludes that actually, no, the investigation was not justified. Now, Michael Tracey can be a pedantic, contrarian prick and a pain in the ass. But in this case, that was actually justified because he was actually right to be agnostic about the proposition of the Russia investigation to begin with. But here's Sam getting increasingly frustrated before finally exploding on him that he will not give him the answers that he wants. So here's a trip back to a simpler time, April of 2019.
Do you agree that, like Glenn Greenwald, who also is a big has a similar critique as yours, and Matt Taibbi, that
those two guys
there should have been
right about
an
everything, and I'm wrong
investigation
about everything. Yeah,
launched
should there be an investigation
with Robert
launched?
Mueller? Because if you think there was no reason for that investigation, then people are going to understand at least where you're coming from here. And I'm just curious if you do, whatever, think that there was a reason to have the investigation of the special counsel.
Well, the special counsel investigation we now know was launched on false pretenses because the impetus for the investigation
at the time, let's put it this way, at the time,
can I complete the thought?
Sure.
The thought? The impetus for the investigation, according to all the Democrats who heralded Robert Mueller as this valiant savior,
the Democrats did not appoint Robert Mueller.
But
irrelevant. You know that's irrelevant. You know what he means.
And they
were heralding the appointment of Robert Mueller. They had Robert De Niro playing Robert Mueller on SNL. Oh, Robert Mueller's the shark in the water. He's coming for you. You know, they made this TV detective hero character out of Robert Mueller.
They did a whole Christmas production number about Mueller to All I Want for Christmas Is You.
That's right. That's right. They made him out to be this gumshoe. No one evades the grip of Robert Mueller. Then when Robert Mueller comes out, he testifies. They wheel him out. He looks like fucking Stan's grandfather from South Park. That's who Robert Mueller actually was. But they built him up into this folk hero. All right,
it looked like Dianne Feinstein.
Right, looks like Dianne Feinstein. Yeah.
Him vociferously as the person who is going to hold Trump accountable for his purported conspiratorial relationship with Putin that came to be characterized as collusion. That was the whole reason why Democrats were so adamant that this investigation had to be launched.
Who appointed Robert Mueller? Who appointed Robert Mueller?
Again, not the point.
Rod Rosenstein.
Who cares?
I don't absolve Rod Rosenstein at all. I don't absolve any of these security state officials that Democrats and MSNBC decided that they were in love with over the past 2.5 years.
See, this is another pattern. They tried to... At every turn, because this Russiagate story was so transparently ridiculous and stupid, the libs tried to disown it as it was happening. Like, as you would own them, as they would take an L, they would try to disown the story. Oh, well, wait a minute. Wait, who appointed Robert Mueller? Who appointed Robert Mueller? Right? As if, no, listen, we're not running this. We're not running this. This is just the system playing out. And you'll see how Sam's arguments just evaporate. And he's up against Michael Tracey, a guy who I don't particularly enjoy. Like, Michael Tracey doesn't really take positions on things. Like I said, he's a very pedantic guy. But in this case, that style happens to coincide with a winning argument because he ends up being right to say, hey, I don't know. if the investigation should have happened. It
right.
seems like it was based on a load of bullshit. It was impossible to know at the time. That's the thing. That was the sort of really lazy part about Sam's argument here is it was impossible to know at the time whether there ought to be some investigation into something, because all these intelligence agencies and all these media people were just throwing out stories faster than you could process them. And so the idea is, well, maybe some of them are true. How can an ordinary person parse that? So how can an ordinary person say definitively at the time there should be no investigation whatsoever? That's not what Tracey says. That's why he says he's agnostic. What was clear was that the core claim seemed almost certainly ridiculous.
Right.
All right, let's keep going. Well, I'm sorry, unless you had something else to add.
Is why okay. So the majority report, like, I'm kind of fascinated. I'm fascinated by like who the market for this is. So like you're slightly to the left of MSNBC, and you like the idea that maybe they'll notice a chat that you put in the chat section. Like that's all I can like. Why else would you watch this? Because it's
this
just
is like the low testosterone version of Cenk Uygur, basically.
And to the right of Cenk Uygur.
In this case, well, though the Russiagate stuff was pretty.
Well, that's true. That's true. But the majority report, I mean, their takes are pretty aligned with what you would hear on The View. Like I don't see anything from them where it's like, well, okay, like, what is it? You just like that kind of low budget look of it? Like, why don't you just watch a channel with money? Like, why are you watching this? I don't understand what the appeal is. He's boring. Vigeland, I mean, you know, she's an attractive woman, but she's pretty fucking boring too. Like, they're both boring. This was
back before the Vigeland era. This was during the Brooks era, and Jamie Peck was on there. So they were both far to the left of Sam. But this is just, I mean, this is a conversation that in retrospect, now with this Durham report having dropped, I mean, how funny is it to see him? And you watch as it goes on. There's just a few more minutes.
That's another thing.
He just loses.
If you like to watch people who are constantly wrong, why don't you just watch corporate media, man? Like, what are you doing over here on YouTube? I mean, honestly, I feel like it's because you could, like, maybe get noticed in the chat. I don't see why else you would watch this.
Could be. By the way, folks, hit that subscribe button. We are up to 9135. Big subscriber bounce since we started the night. Hit that subscribe button, folks, if you like what you're seeing. A lot of you are here for the first time. Please hit that like button and hit that subscribe button.
And if you don't like what you're seeing, troll us in the comments later. It still boosts us on the algorithm.
Yeah,
the algorithm still reads it as engagement.
Engagement, exactly.
We're convenient foils for Donald Trump. I think it's a total journalistic disgrace.
Do you think
people like John Brennan
were
hired by MSNBC?
Michael, listen, this is a very easy question for us to have to start this. To start this, okay?
Go ahead.
The question is, did you think at the time of the investigation, and if it's a different answer from did, and
I'm not as hip as most of you cool online left kids, but I think this is what you would call nowadays cope, right? Is this what cope means? I don't really know what cope means. I'm not cool enough to know all the new lingo. Seems to me like this is what we would call cope, what the kids are calling cope nowadays.
You can tell.
I mean, that seems like that's what this is.
They call this the cope. This is what the kids are saying now.
That's what the kids are calling cope now.
It's the cope.
But did you think it was appropriate to have this to launch this investigation? And if you want to say, do you now, in retrospect, you want to have a different opinion? That's fine too. This is not a gotcha question. This is a question to find out if the underlying thing was a valid thing to have happen.
Sure. I think the underlying thing has now been proven to be a fraud. And it was apparent to me from the very outset, so going back to July of 2016, that it was a fraud.
Okay.
You could see the narrative congeal in real time. You got to let me complete a thought.
Well, you're not answering the question. You're not answering the question, Michael.
He is answering the question. He just said, you said, do you think it was warranted? And then he says, well, it seems now that it was a crock of shit. Which leads you to suggest, no, it probably wasn't warranted. Like, how is that not a satisfactory answer? It's not the answer he wants him to give, but he's answering the question. And yet this guy just like, this is the trajectory of all the arguments you have with these Russiagators is their arguments, like I said, they're so thin. I mean, there was nothing here from the outset, it was very obvious to any objective thinker.
In the end, it
there.
always turns into you love Putin.
Right. It always turns into them just insisting that you grant them the sort of basest version of what their argument could possibly be. As we see, it boils down to them just insisting that you say it. Say what? Eventually, it all comes back to say they meddled. Say the Russians meddled. Once the collusion argument disappears, once all of that goes away, you just very calmly, very easily debunk that point by point. They eventually get to the point where, say it! Say they meddled! Say they interfered! Say it! Literally, I had people on Facebook telling me, say it! Say it! Like they're trying to break me, you know? Like it's a good cop, bad cop game, and they try to quarter me.
I think that's why most of us just don't engage with those people
because
anymore.
This is
because
what it
you
is.
Can't. I mean, unless you just like to go back and forth like that, there's no reason for it. You'll never get through to them. Never.
No, never. All right, here we go.
This is a very easy question because when Glenn was asked this question, when Matt is asked this question, they can answer it without giving an extended. This is a very easy question.
I think he answered it. Okay, so now the screen goes black because I couldn't subject you to this whole thing. It goes on like that for another 8 minutes, okay? 8 more minutes. So here's 8 minutes later when Sam finally breaks. He finally resorts to the line I was telling you get from every lib at the end of a Russiagate discussion. Here we go. 8 minutes later.
Were you aware that the Russians were behind the hacking into the emails dump and, you know,
there's no real proof of that.
Without any question as to what implications it had on the election, because you and I have.
But now 8 minutes later, he's abandoned the collusion argument. Now he's saying, "Were you aware? Are you aware that they meddled?"
They never proved that. The server was not given to the FBI.
That's true.
It was given to CrowdStrike.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All right, but here he is, 8 minutes.
No
8
idea
minutes
what
later.
that was. I suspect it wasn't a dramatic impact on the election, although obviously the emails were quite problematic for the Clinton campaign. But nevertheless, I happen to think there's probably a dozen things that were but-fors in terms of her loss. But were you aware of that? And do you acknowledge that that is the truth?
Well, my attitude towards those emails was that they uncovered genuine corruption and malfeasance.
I understand that, but that's not what I asked you.
Because the resignation of the entire Democratic National Committee.
That is not what I asked you.
Revealed that Bernie Sanders got screwed out of.
That's not what I asked you. Michael,
why
are you being so evasive? Why are you being so fucking evasive here? I invited you on the show because you wanted to malign one of my guests and cry about my inviting someone on my show.
Man.
And I'm asking you some basic questions. And already 10 minutes into this, you won't even answer the basic question. Do you believe the report that you now tout in it saying that the Russians were interfering in the election by hacking into Hillary Clinton's emails and by their shenanigans on social media? Do you think that is true?
Media.
Yes or no?
Did you know that in July? They attacked Hillary Clinton on Facebook. Say it. Say it. Say it. Say it. That's it. After 10 minutes, that's what it always comes down to. So it always comes down to say it.
And the 100,000 emails that she deleted were all yoga appointments. Admit it. There was nothing there.
Oh my God. Wow.
That's exactly what I would be saying if Donald Trump had deleted 100,000 emails that were under indictment. That there was nothing there.
Exactly. What? I mean, that says it all right there. By the way, the guest that Michael Tracey was maligning, according to Sam Seder, was a blogger named Marcy Wheeler, who claimed to have a smoking gun proving collusion between Trump and Russia. She apparently gave her source up to the FBI, which is, of course, a no-no in journalism, right? Yes. Really a violation of the journalist's creed. And turns out, not only did she give up that source, but obviously the FBI didn't think much of her claims because at the end of the day, what did they, of course, find? No collusion, right? So that was the guest that Sam... that was whose honor Sam was really defending.
Whenever we go after the majority report, people are always like, debate Sam. Is this the great Sam that we're supposed to be afraid
Yeah,
of?
this is the great Sam.
And it's
the great
saying that
debater.
the Russians were
This is like every
interfering in the
fucking shit
election
lib I've ever had
by
a debate
hacking
with.
into
Exactly.
Hillary Clinton's emails and by their shenanigans on social media. Do you think that is true? Yes or no? Did you know that in July?
Yeah, that's the guy.
Are you now, or have you ever been a colluder?
Yeah.
Have you ever coddled Donald Trump?
Have you ever coddled Donald Trump? Indeed. Wow.
Unreal.
Unreal. A trip down memory lane. Hope you guys enjoyed that.
Please clap.